Welcome to the Restoring Our Cities podcast. My name is Jobin. We want to welcome you to another episode. And this is our podcast where we have unfiltered conversations on today's topics that are impacting our generation and our community. And we are in a new series of leadership. It's been great so far, and we've been just talking about the attributes of a leader, how we choose characteristics of great leaders. And in this episode, it's a very special episode where we talk about choosing leaders. We obviously have a really important decision coming up with our election, but just even talking about choosing great leaders and looking for the right characteristics of leaders, we wanted to talk about how we go through the process of making the decision. And so in this very special episode, I'm joined by Toby Kurian, marketing expert, as well as Alvin Mathew, who's been a church leader for so many years. And we just get together and talk candidly about choosing leaders, not only the election, but also in our professional lives, in our church lives, and really how we arrive at deciding on who's fit to take the responsibilities of being a leader. So we really hope you enjoy this episode. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to our podcast. It really helps us out if you share any reviews. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor. You can also watch the video episode of this on YouTube. So please follow us on social media as well and get engaged in the conversation. We'd love to hear from you as well. But we hope you enjoy this episode, and we look forward to engaging you in the conversation. Welcome, everyone, to the Restoring Our Cities podcast. We are back with another episode. We started off this series in leadership just talking about what makes a good leader, some of the great characteristics in leaders that we can find, and just sharing our perspective from our community. And in today's episode, we are talking about the subject of choosing leaders. And with us today, we've got Toby Kurian, marketing expert, who's going to share his insight, as well as Alvin Mathew, who's been a church leader for so many years in the Chicagoland area. Thank you guys for jumping on another episode. I'm kind of excited to talk about this because our election is coming up. So I think this is very pertinent to the dread and excitement of others. I thought it was really important that we talk about choosing leaders.
I can't believe how fast that came. Dude, it was just like the last 2 months, it was a sprint. I think I was talking to my wife, Jamie, and she's like, oh yeah, election's like next week. I'm like, what?
Next week.
So you're talking about the last 2 months. I was thinking the last 4 years because for some people, they'd be like, these 4 years have been forever, right?
The longest, yeah.
But the 4 years since then, it's been absolutely crazy. And some people might think it's exhausting. Some people are like, oh, this is the best. I don't know.
This is the best. Oh, no.
This is the best. Every day gets better.
Yeah, I mean, so yes, it's been crazy to see, but here we are again. We have to make this decision. And before we, I think we have to get a little political. I don't want to shy away from some of that stuff. But, to stay within the topic of leadership, I really wanted to talk about what should our lens be when we choose leaders, when we elect, whether it's officials for political office, or we're selecting a leader in business or promoting somebody at work, or even just in our spheres of like influence. I'm going to designate this person to be in charge. What are some of those things that we look for? So, guys, have you ever had to be in that position where you've had to help choose someone to be in a role or in a position and take some ownership or responsibility of something?
Yeah, this was about 10 years ago. We decided to choose you as our rock leader, and we have
I was waiting for it
ever since.
This is actually an intervention.
You were too excited to answer that question. I was should hit pause.
You suck.
So now there's another election. You can vote me out. Now in our work, in our even at church, right? Like you get those fun general body meetings every once in a while.
Oh gosh, yeah.
You guys remember those? Those are interesting, man.
Yes.
Looking at this as an adult, those were some interesting times. These are the guys who are leading our church, and I'm not trying to say anything bad. Like they did, they did great. But man, those meetings, they were
Out of
Intense
hand.
is,
Yeah,
is
out of
not the
hand.
word.
Yeah, it is. I think if you're from the South Asian community and you hear this podcast, if you don't know us, and if I just said, "Hey, have you ever had a general body meeting at your church?" You might laugh or you might say, "Oh, wow, I can remember this story," right? It's pretty crazy how there's this weird dynamic when it comes to choosing leaders. There's always this, I don't know, tension, conflict.
I
Alvin, I don't
can
know if you've seen that at all.
Yeah. No, I think me and Toby have a lot of stories about how crazy it used to be. But oh man.
I mean, even in that, like, I think everybody had everybody was trying to do the best they can. They had the best intentions,
Yeah.
but there, of course,
They just
there's
didn't
sides
execute
to
on it too
things,
well.
and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and executing anything especially in the Indian church, it takes a long, long time. And I think it has to go with, like, oh, are we changing things where, it's going to get out of hand? That was always the thing. Like,
Yeah.
if we're going to change this, like that whole, what's that theory that people love to
The
use?
slippery slope or whatever, right?
Slippery slope
Yeah.
theory, right? Like, if we allow this, what else is going to come in? And,
Mm.
especially older Indian, leaders, they're wary of that. They want to make sure, they think whatever they're doing now is good enough. So, let's not try to, you know, shake the beehive or whatever
Yeah,
Hmm.
you want
yeah,
to say,
rock the boat.
rock the
Yeah.
boat.
So what's that criteria? So like even in that context, shouldn't we be looking for certain characteristics when we are putting someone in a position? And what should those characteristics be? What are some of those things that come to mind?
I mean, if you want a good leader, right? Because if you don't
Yeah.
want a good leader, it's just put them in for my benefit.
Right, right, right.
But if you want a good leader, one of the main thing is, you have to care about the people you're serving.
Hmm.
That has to be
Yeah.
one of the top priorities. I mean, if you're a church leader or if you're a Christian in general, you want to make sure it's someone, a man of God, right? But if we're speaking in just general terms, like, it has to be someone that care for their, in a kind of a Christian saying, like, flock, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely need like, especially in the Christian sphere, they have to be someone with a good, I guess the word we'd use in the Christian sphere is like testimony, but like a good reputation,
Mm-hmm.
good character, people that are like upstanding, that, they, what's the word? I think like the Bible's called like being above reproach, like meaning no one's really gonna like blame you for your past actions, or like, I mean, there's no like scandal or something, you know what I mean? That's like attached to you, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's not obviously in nowadays, it's not as easy to do. Someone will turn something into a scandal, but but basically people who have a good reputation, who are genuinely like, have a good, I guess the word is character, like maybe I'm saying their character is like of good reputation,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they can't just dig through your Twitter posts from 10 years ago and then
Right,
find
right, right.
that you said something or
Yeah,
posted
something
something
crazy. Right,
weird,
right, right.
which
Yeah.
which is the trend, right?
Oh yeah.
It's strange. But even taking it out of the Christian sense, I feel like it's sometimes we use that as a crutch. Like if we just put in our church view and say, all right, well, if I'm in a church, I need to select somebody of good character.
Right.
But that seems to me like even if I'm at work and I want to hire someone and I want to put them in a position of leadership, I would want that person to have
Good
great
character.
character.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think in any sense, anywhere, any organization
Hmm.
or any group of people, you need someone like that. You need, yeah,
Yeah.
characteristics is important.
And I think, Toby, you mentioned it on our last episode, trustworthy and accountability. I think those two things really resonated when we were talking. Those two characteristics in any kind of leader seem like it's super important and valuable because that person is in a leadership position to make decisions and to influence other people.
Hmm.
And so, and I was thinking about this topic and just jotting down some thoughts. And the responsibilities of a leader in any sense, and maybe we look at it just from a broad perspective, what are the responsibilities? What does the term leader come with? If someone slaps that title on you or views you as a leader, what do you think some of those responsibilities are?
You have to be good.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be good at what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, for sure.
If you're a CEO, if you're a coach, if you're, someone that's leading, any type of organization or team, you have to be good at what you're doing. You can't be like a great character and good guy and overall and everything, but if you're bad at your job, then you're not
Yeah.
fulfilling the whole like the full puzzle of a leader. One of the main things is you got to be good at your job. You got to be good at your craft.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, because there's plenty of people, like, especially if we're talking about, okay, they should have good character, they should have a good reputation. If they aren't good at what they do, like basically the whole purpose of them being a leader, then that doesn't help, right? So I guess that also leads to kind of also in the position of, what if someone theoretically is good at what they do, but they might have a bad reputation, which might be applicable to other decisions and things we have to do.
Mhm.
But there has to be a balance between the two of them. Like, I think I've heard that said, where, like, was it maybe Henry Ford who said he didn't really need to know every single fact or every single thing. He just needed to know someone who knew it, and then he would get the information. You know what I mean? I think being a leader, you're going to have weaknesses anyway. So whatever your weaknesses are, you're supplementing that with someone on a team that you would be leading.
So you have to be open-minded too, then, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Open-minded, willing to listen to your counselors, or, I guess your board, or whoever you call it,
Yeah, I think that's a great characteristic, and some people, I feel like I'm guilty of this a lot too, where you have an idea and you want to run with it, but then you just run and like don't, you can't possibly do all things at once, right?
Right.
And you got to bring people alongside you and be mentally cognizant of the fact that you cannot do those things and you have to actually ask for help, right? Like, and
Mm-hmm.
delegate in some of those things. But you bring up a really good point, Alvin, because I mean, we are in election season, right? And so, there's this balance of like, all right, character, you got to have high character, but you also have to be really good at your job too. You got to have
Yeah.
this mixture of things.
Of both.
S-
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do we do that, right? How do you
Yeah.
actually make the decision so then when you get presented these options to say, all right, well, here's what we have,
Mm-hmm.
make your decision, and then you have to start to. It'd be nice if we could just say, well, I want this, 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 and this, and this, but that's not how options are presented to us,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, um, how should we actually, even from maybe a Christian perspective, or just even choosing leaders? It's nice to say these are the characteristics I want, but how do I arrive at the decision, right? Because I feel like that's where people are struggling with. Some people are not struggling with this
Mm-hmm.
whatsoever. Even with voting, it's just like, all right, this is a very clear-cut choice. And I totally understand that. And then there's some people who are, okay, a little bit more on the fence. I don't even like to use that term, but um, they're not
So
fully clear or confident in
Either
in either
choice.
option, right?
Right.
yeah.
So how do you help guide someone like that who is indecisive and presented options to help them narrow down making a decision?
I mean, one of the things is you have to understand what is important to you. Whether it be morally important to you, or whether it is a benefit to your life or your business or whatever. Not you have to understand who's a benefit for you. Especially in the election, because this is not like a personal thing. This is a very much it's a political thing. It's something that is unique in its own right, than anything else. So when it comes to that, and when it comes to the government, you have to understand what is the most benefit or what candidate can give you the most benefit. And of course, remember I said earlier, like benefit of morality too, that's included in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's, like I said, it's a really unique thing because it combines almost everything in your life. Your personal life, your business life, your your social life, everything. Politics is crazy. It's one of those unique, crazy things that you have to understand that everything really matters when you choose a leader. So you have to understand what is your what would which leader or which party in this case will help you move forward, I guess.
So no, I think what's valuable to you, right? What do you value? What are the morals and policies that you value? And what do you think would move not only yourself and your family, but the country forward if you have that perspective? So yeah, I think that's very insightful, and it's complicated too, right? Because it's not a very easy decision to arrive at, right?
Yeah, it's totally complicated. It's not like you were saying, like it's not so clear cut because especially now, especially with all the stuff that's going on now, and especially with what's frankly the last 4 years have been very volatile. Whether you're pro-Trump person or if you're not a pro-Trump person, you have to admit the country has never seen this much volatility and decisiveness
And
and
divisiveness.
divisiveness. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So yeah, the next week is going to be very. I mean, interesting is probably not even the word, right? It's more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Alvin, do you have any thoughts, I guess, as far as choosing the leader? How do we arrive at a decision? And maybe even from a Christian perspective, like
Hmm.
I don't know if you've had to do that in all your leadership years at your church and putting people's in roles and delegating and things like that. How do we arrive at the decision to say, yeah, this is the person, I'm going to select them?
Yeah, I think that's very challenging to kind of figure out because in the church setting, you have some like how I talked about, you have some parameters that are like you can't violate. For instance, they have to be someone of good spiritual standing, of good character, like if they didn't have that, they'd be immediately disqualified, right? Because they couldn't fit the role. In the secular world or like in government, technically people aren't immediately disqualified for that because like I mean anyone who's grown up in Chicago, Illinois knows pretty much politics is corrupt, right? So you're never going to find a perfect candidate. But at the same time, like Toby said, you have to find someone who's going to basically bring about the best good for you and for everyone around you, right? For your community. So it's kind of balancing the pros and cons list of like, okay, well, they might be involved in this bad character, this, scandal, but technically they're doing stuff that's helping people. Okay, so you have to weigh. It's like a personal decision of okay, do I value this more than I value their controversy, or do I value, and I think that decision is unique for everyone. And I know like it's especially in our like divisive times, as Toby said, it's very easy to be like, no, you're wrong about this, or you're wrong about that, or you shouldn't pick this candidate because of all these negatives. But I say, well, I don't want to pick another candidate because of all these negatives. You're basically like, we can't invalidate someone else's choice if they've thoroughly thought through and have a legitimate reason of, hey, this is why I'm doing it. Because I don't truly believe anyone is. I mean, there are people who are probably 100% for Biden or 100% for Trump and unwilling to listen to any of the criticisms. But for, I'm going to say normal people just to be mean, but for normal people who are like, you know, who are kind of conflicted about either choice and saying, hey, I'm going to pick this person because I know there's some scandals or there's some whatever, but I believe that this weighs just a little bit more in their opinion. I can't fault that, but I think we all have to kind of appreciate that either choice is you're going to have some negatives no matter what. So it's you determining, okay, how badly do these negatives outweigh the positives or vice versa.
Yeah, that's interesting, and just it's a I think it's very, I don't know the best way to even phrase this, but I feel like the way that we have to look at this in almost filtering out the bad options and like, all right, let me remove and shuffle away some of the noise to like see clearly what my choice would be. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
so difficult. So, and I want to bring this up because I think in this past week, and I just saw this article from John Piper, obviously very
Yeah.
popular pastor, and he posted this article, and he And he started to talk about the title of the article is Policies, Persons, and Paths to Ruin,
Mm-hmm.
Pondering the Implications of the 2020 Election. And so I read this article several times, just wanted to understand it. And
Yeah.
it seems like it got a lot of buzz within the, like, I guess the church community or whatnot. I saw it trending on Twitter and just
Oh,
lots of
really? Oh,
people.
okay,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
You have to read that article a couple times to
It's so
understand.
good. Yeah.
I'm like, dude, this guy's thoughts are so deep. I'm like, I had to read it
Classic John
again.
Piper.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't want to get into all the theological stuff, right? Like, but I read some articles that were just kind of hearing what he had to say, and it's interesting hearing people's feedback. But here's kind of the core of his argument. And I'm reading this from Relevant Magazine, wrote an article about his article. Okay.
Oh,
But
okay.
it kind of summarized it.
U.S. media.
Yes, right, right.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's how you get your content nowadays. You
Yeah,
write articles
always.
about articles. But they summarized it like this. They said the core of Piper's argument seems to be tackling an oft-heard defense of a conservative Christian vote for Trump. The
Yeah.
president himself may not be a saint, but he's delivering on conservative goals. And according to Piper, that just won't cut it. And then they quote John
Mm.
Piper's article, and he says, I think it's a drastic mistake to think that the deadly influences of a leader comes only through his policies and not also through his person, Piper writes. He also says, flagrant boastfulness, vulgarity, immorality, and fascistness are not only self incriminating, they are nation corrupting. So that's what John Piper said. So he kind of talked about this difference between people and policy, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to look at people. We also have to look at policy. And I think our country and our communities, maybe our family members might say, well, I'm voting because of this policy.
Mm-hmm.
And then some people might say, I'm voting because of this person.
Oh, yeah.
But there's two things here. How do we balance that? How do we prioritize and should we prioritize people over policy?
No, I think it has to be balanced, or as balanced as you possibly can. I don't think you can have extreme of either.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? I mean, because we started talking about leaders, like characteristics of a leader, and we need this person to be a really leader, and they're going to be super influential. Why can't I just say I need the person to be as upstanding as possible?
Because of what John Piper was referring to, it's nation corrupting. So
Mm-hmm.
so I mean, right now in the world, right? If you look at history, there's been 1,000 kings and emperors and things like that, right? But some of the notable empires that kind of stand out is the Roman Empire and now the U.S., right?
Mm-hmm.
The sphere of influence that we have, and the sphere of influence almost comes from the very top, which is the president. So what he says and what he what whoever that person is, says or does, it impacts the nation, yes, but even furthermore, it impacts the world. And I think that's what John Piper is kind of alluding to. If and again, I don't want to go too much into the whole politics of worldwide American politics or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
we're generally seen as something to look at, as a leader in this world, generally for the last, whatever, couple hundred years.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So because of that, I think, the person does matter as much as the policy. And it also, it dilutes the policy when a person is so erratic and, divisive, because if you look at some of the things that he has done, there it is, right? We said it. Trump
Uh-huh.
has done, some of it is, there's some good stuff in there. I don't want to get into a lot of it because I don't know all the ins and outs. But prison reform is one.
Right.
Those kind of things are there. But because of his character and how he's so erratic, that's not even in the front line at all. And he himself sometimes, tries to like, convey that message to people. In that 60-minute interview, he tried to convey that message over and over, but it's just so nobody wants to hear it because of the person, the divisive person, he has been the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm. So people definitely make an influence, but
yeah, I mean, and even speaking to like the John Piper article, I think Relevant said that correctly when it was aimed at conservative Christians that were theoretically voting for Trump on policy over personhood in comparison to the Biden platform, who theoretically seems more upstanding, but then policy-wise would be also in the complete opposite direction. So he's contrasting this, I guess, juxtaposition of how a Christian should vote when theoretically they have no place in this dynamic, because I can't theoretically vote for bad policy, but I also theoretically can't vote for bad character, and so you're kind of stuck, right? And so there are a lot of people on the I'm gonna say air quotes Christian side that are voting for Trump specifically because they like the more conservative policies that are being enacted. Great. But then I think they take it too far, or they would try to then disqualify Biden for policy. And I think John Piper's kind of maybe not critiquing conservative Christians, but just critiquing Christians and saying, hold on, you can't value one over the other. Right. And like Toby said, they have to be balanced. Mm-hmm. So, and then he even goes further on in the article where he doesn't actually tell you who he's going to vote for. Right. And he says, I don't think you should judge me and I won't judge you, but I think we have to be realistic about, you can't just say, oh, because I'm voting for Biden, I'm clearly a better Christian, or because I'm voting for Trump, I'm clearly a better Christian. It's like, no, like you're basically screwed either way. You have to vote for what you pray about and believe, and in your conscience, okay, I'm making a conscious choice for these specific reasons. As long as that's substantiated on something with foundation, great. But there are a lot of people, and especially in our time, who are kind of, it's sort of the culture we live in where we want to pick and choose, and we want to, like, that's the hill I'm going to die on is nope. Like, we hear a lot about like the one, what do they call that? The one position voters, or the single position voters, or, oh, this is the, whether it's abortion, whether it's prison reform, whether it's, the economy, whatever it is, they try to push that position. Well, that's really what I'm voting for. When in reality, it's going to be a complex decision,
Right.
So, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you stated that really well. And I like the fact that John Piper didn't just, throw this out as like, hey, I'm voting for this person. And I see the interpretations from, social media, and people will say, well, see, this article is saying that you shouldn't vote for Trump.
Oh, yeah,
or
yeah.
seeing, people are going to misconstrue this as, a justification of why I should vote for Biden,
Right.
or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not that at all. It's really that we should have a balanced approach, and we have to see that people, like Toby, you really shared that very clearly, that people can influence nations, obviously, in the role of a president, and essentially the world too, especially for a world leader. And so I guess from the decision of should we choose or prioritize people over policy, I think we have to really balance those out. I think it can't just be one or the other. Hey, this person's, because I mean, let's be really frank. If we're having unfiltered conversations, I mean, both candidates have said racially insensitive things.
Oh, yeah.
Both candidates have been accused of sexual misconduct.
Yep.
Right? And when we look at character, I think some of those are the two things that I just immediately come to mind. Whether you see more of this on one person, I don't want to be the moral police and say, well, you know what, you have 26 accusations versus 19, and okay, so you have worse character.
Yeah, you were up in the third quarter. You gotta get those numbers up, Biden.
Right. It's like, if we had to be in the position of the moral police to judge character, which I do not think that's what we're called to do as citizens, let alone Christians, right? Like, I'm not here to judge your character. And I mean, I'll just share like my opinion. We can really skew someone's character too, right? We can shape the narrative. I mean, look at the primaries. When we look at the primaries, everyone's like looking at Joe Biden as, oh, he's not
he's
all there,
fit
right?
to
He's
make
sleeping. And But then now
Sleepy
it's like everybody,
Joe.
Sleepy Joe
let's
Biden.
rally
Yeah.
behind him. And I understand that there's dynamics and levels
Yeah.
to this, right? But things shape our narrative. So if we have a media that shapes our narrative, and then you tell me, hey, judge this person based on the story I just told you
Oh yeah.
The article
No.
of the article of the article.
of the article,
Yeah. Oh
exactly.
god. Yeah.
It's a slippery slope, right? It is
That's
a
funny.
slippery slope. So I think that's an interesting way to look at it. So if we had to filter out bad options, right? So
Hmm.
how would we do that? If I say, okay, well, little suspect on person, on character and quality, but then I have to start looking at policy. Do we start to say some things way more or valuable or less
Oh yeah,
valuable than the other?
definitely. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
How do we filter that out to make the decision or land on a person to put into leadership?
I mean, American politics. I don't think it's
Yeah,
a
you're kind of.
filter process. It's just
Mm,
it's a process of democracy. The overall whelming of citizens choose the
The
leader.
leader. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't. I think that's a beautiful thing about it too. Is the fact that you could whatever it is, at the end of the day, and I know some people might listen to this and be like, no, man, like the electoral college, man, and they're the ones
Yeah.
who choose it.
Come on.
Or there's
Like,
Illuminati, man.
we all
But
got to look up
man,
Democratic Republic.
when we say things, I think it's in general, right? General,
Yeah.
like the
that's
people
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
choose the president.
I want to
So,
know our audience if they are
Oh
yeah.
my
full
gosh.
of conspiracy
Can you
theories.
imagine?
Right.
These
Ban
guys are
Electoral
working for the
College.
government.
We're really big in
We're
those
all plants,
circles. It's
guys.
like, wow, we got a lot of views from this one area. Uh, no, I think it's
Oh
important
man.
that you say that because like even my question was how do we filter out bad options, but maybe that's not even the way that we should be looking at this because we have a process in selecting leaders. But like, our series is on leadership, right? And
Hmm.
so, even outside of politics, outside of just voting too, when we are selecting leaders and we don't have the best candidates, and I've been in that position at work where I've had to see folks interview for positions and then say, wow,
Yeah, this is the
ooh,
talent pool you have.
stack of resumes. I'm like, seriously? But you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like one of those things where we have to say, okay, what do I have to, I don't want to say settle, but how do we arrive at a decision when we are presented options?
I think we have to really like wrestle with it. And I think oftentimes we kind of want the easy choice because it's like, no, this is the clear winner, clear choice I want to make. But in reality, like even just like, I mean, I know we're kind of like tacitly speaking about like a presidential election,
Hmm.
but even consider that in any like voting or any decision making process, it's more important that you kind of figure out or you like get in the practice of weighing the different options and trying to decide what's worthwhile or what matters to you, what doesn't matter to you.
Hmm.
Even in like your local elections and stuff, the stuff that'll actually affect you personally compared to the effect a presidential or a local election will have. It's significantly greater. So in the process of like researching and like looking at looking at policy, looking at what is really happening here, you're educating yourself, and now you're becoming you're able to now rightly discern, okay, what do I really value? Is this actually important to me? Is it not?
Right.
And really going through like that process. So that's how you filter bad options is, okay, I need to like do the research. And I know
Right.
it's very easy for us not to want to do the research. It's very easy for us to take the like, I'm gonna click one one side and just go all the way down.
Boop.
Good, I'm good.
Yep.
Like a
Like a
select all.
Scantron
Good
in
to
the
go.
fifth
Yeah.
grade or something,
I'm
right?
gonna make a Christmas tree and we'll be we'll be good to go, right? Like that's not gonna work out good. You know what I mean?
I saw that in the movies.
Yeah. Oh, it was terrible.
Fill out a. Oh man, for all
Yeah.
the young listeners out there, you probably
Yeah.
don't know what a
It's like, what's a
Scantron is.
scantron?
We used to use number
Ooh.
two pencils and
It's like,
that's
no, you
funny.
mean tablet. Like,
Tablet, yes, you get to, yeah.
oh
Um,
man.
no, that's a good way to put it, Alvin. Like the way we filter out options is by doing our homework and doing our
Yeah, doing the
research and
research,
like
man. Yeah.
understanding what we want to vote on and what's valuable. To Toby, your point earlier, what's valuable to us, and then we make those choices. And I think a lot of times, especially young people, um, I think older people have seen this, and that's why maybe we see more waves of people in older demographics voting
Hmm.
comparatively to young people because they've seen the political game and have seen the the jabs and the
And the
political
stuff that happens.
sparring in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
media, and then they ultimately see how it impacts their lives, right? When it comes to like health insurance and the economy and their
Oh yeah.
families. And so, yeah, maybe it has a more real effect compared to young people, but then young people might get hit with the noise and just
Yeah.
maybe make a more emotional response.
Reaction. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, even like I don't even think it's even fair to just say it's just young people that are manipulated emotionally,
Mhm.
because now it's like
Oh, I say
even
that because
our
I'm old. I
yeah.
say that because I'm old.
Like even like our parents' generation, I'm like, we're stopping looking at like facts and being objective, and we're just being swayed by emotion, and it's like that's a very dangerous place to be, because it's like incredibly easy to be manipulated, but also it like I think it maybe you guys can tell me it triggers our fight or flight responses. So we stop like thinking clearly and we're just like, no, I have to react. I have to, and it's like you're going a little extreme on
Mhm.
something that doesn't have to be as extreme. We can chill out,
Right, right, right.
and
I mean,
relax. But oh man,
we may have talked about this on a couple episodes before, but yeah, like, the whole idea of unfriending and removing
oh
you. I'm
gosh,
not
yeah.
going to be your friend anymore because you disagreed with me. I mean, and then we talk about this election and the fallout when we,
Oh,
okay, so from what I'm, hearing in different circles, it's like, all right, well, if this person wins, everything's going to be chaos. But then also, if this other person wins, it's going to be
it's
chaos
all
too. So, like,
yeah,
what do we do next week, right? When there's chaos? I guess there apparently
yeah,
is guaranteed chaos. So,
guaranteed chaos.
how do we deal with that? But is that even just the approach we should take? Because like no matter who wins, should we learn how to come together, and unify? Uh,
Yes.
Here's a Christian response. Does it even matter?
Oh wow.
wow, Toby got real deep there. Doesn't even matter. Because when the trumpet of the Lord shall
Oh,
sound,
Right.
somebody's gonna be hitting the drum. Oh man, I don't know. I don't know. That's a good
We're not
question.
of this world, gentlemen.
That's
Yes,
right.
yes. Man,
Nothing
in the blink of an eye,
matters.
we'll all
Nothing.
be gone. And then,
Oh man.
man,
Some people are legit can be like, what are they talking about?
wait, what's happening? What
It's
kind
like,
of?
wait, what?
Maybe they are a part of some kind of weird. Uh,
See, man, aliens.
so, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the result of the election will be, and then like what the fallout, or maybe it's just all okay. Well, let's get back to normal life, or let's whatever is normal. 2020 has just been off its rocker.
Right.
So, does everything just settle down a little bit now because we're not in this fight for this title anymore, and now we can start to get more practical in tackling some of these issues? I don't know. I don't know if that's the case, but I
Hmm.
feel like it's important because all those characteristics that we look for in a leader need to now come into fruition, right?
Yeah.
Like the people and the policy, all those things that we want and we've researched and we've filtered out and like we've educated ourselves on. We portray this on a person and they got to execute it, right? If that doesn't happen, I mean, is that just, hey, we are all suckers and we just chose the wrong leader? Or
Listen, man, at the end of the day, it's just 4 years. We'll be all
Yeah.
right.
You're screwed either
I
way.
mean, at the end of the
I
eight
mean,
years max. You know
yeah.
what I mean? And it's just, whatever.
those
I can hide out for 4 years.
those founding fathers knew what they were doing. They're like, you can only tell your
Oh,
threshold.
actually, that didn't happen until JFK.
The 4 years?
Because yeah, I believe it was unlimited terms until JFK, and I think JFK is the one who put that into place. You
Yeah,
can
because
fact
FDR
check
had
me on
almost
that.
three. Was
Somebody
it
fact
FDR?
check. We need to get a
Yeah,
researcher on
We
here.
need to get
yeah.
an
You
actual
know, Joe Rogan
producer.
has that guy, little Jamie or young Jamie.
Ah, yeah, I think that'd be hilarious. But, no, sorry. This is just video. You should see this, the video of JFK saying this. Um, so, I know we're talking about leadership and choosing leaders, and obviously the election is so huge and voting is so critically important that we need to make sure that we are doing our homework and then choosing leaders in the right capacity and who can actually execute on the things that we hold valuable, right? So, taking it into a more broader context, what are the non-negotiables when selecting a leader, right? Whether it's
Ketchup on hot dog. And draw the line right there.
if you put ketchup on hot dogs,
Yeah, you'll never get my vote.
Yeah.
I will refuse to vote for you. Um,
Once again, people be like, "What are they talking about?"
if you're not from Chicago.
If you're not from Chicago, we don't put ketchup on hot dogs.
Yeah.
It's just a thing that we just don't do.
Just
I
don't do
hate
it,
that we have
guys.
to explain that. I mean,
Yeah.
come on.
You should just know.
The whole world should know that.
The whole world should know. I mean, it's just what the neon green relish from like Wrigley Field. You got to put that on your hot dog, and then some onions and a mustard. That's it.
People think I'm crazy when I say that in New York. You're like, what? I'm like, yeah.
I don't get it. I don't get it. See, I mean, I feel like if you know that, you inherently have the traits of a good leader. Like you
Yes,
could probably lead the free world.
Yep.
Toby for president.
Hey, put some ketchup on. Put some mustard on. Hey,
When I'm talking foreign policy,
hey, get out of here, policy, schmolicy.
oh man. But okay. So food, your palate. We need to make sure you have a well-established palate.
Good palate.
What are some of those things? What are some of those things that are non-negotiable? Like if you don't have this, I can't even think of you as a leader. I mean, the election obviously coming up, and people have all these polarizing views, and people are saying, and the people who are in the camps, who are in the staunch camps of not even seeing the other side are, I am not voting for that person because of this.
Right.
And it almost seems like that is their non-negotiable, right? Like look at his character and look at what he's done. Racist. Look at how he's treated women. Like if, most of the media looking at President Trump, right? Like, and people saying that about Biden as well, right? Like those are their non-negotiables. If I hear people say, especially with the racist comment, right? Like to me, if someone is inherently racist,
Yeah, blatantly racist.
I feel like those are like at this point, that's an obvious thing. Like you can't be a racist. You just can't be a good leader.
And I agree with that. I feel like the interpretations that people say and characterize people, there might be some truth to it, right? But
I think, but we should also probably clarify that, like, so when we're saying like non-negotiables, I know a lot of what we're saying is also like perception and media driven on either candidate, right? And so I think, like for instance, let's do like a crazy example. For instance, if like obviously Adolf Hitler, like clearly racist. I'm doing the most extreme example. Clearly racist, clearly disqualified because of empirical evidence that demonstrates, oh yeah, right? Versus now in our cancel culture days, where I found a tweet 10 years ago, you're now labeled as racist, and that's it. Versus a history of action of like, well, maybe they made some mistake and now they've changed, or now it's say we have like for Biden with like policy. Okay, he's done a lot with attacking. I want to be very careful as I say this. Like basically the opposite of prison reform. He was basically advocated for profit prisons and imprisoning ethnic minorities, and is a major proponent of that. So is Kamala Harris. So if you're wrestling with these different issues, it's like, okay, do I disqualify on actual things that have happened, or am I only listening to what other people are saying, and that's what's making me disqualify them?
Or like the characterization of someone?
Or like, or this is the impression, so I think we have to kind of characterize how deep are we going to go to say a non-negotiable. Like, I think it should be something like, okay, this is blatantly obvious. This is a non-negotiable. You know what I mean?
Right.
And if that's the case, yeah, there's plenty of like racist, there's sexist, there.
Yeah.
I mean, and any of them. If that's like an intrinsic quality, yeah, absolutely, man. You can't.
No, I like how you put that, Alvin, because we have to define what non-negotiable is and how we interpret and come to the conclusion that a characteristic is non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Is it a perception or a characterization of that trait, or is it
Yeah.
based on factual evidence, right?
Right.
And if it's that, then it's like almost
Then
wow,
yeah.
hard no, right? Um, no, I think this is a great conversation, and I'm hoping people start to see and hear like what are some of those attributes of a leader that I should be valuing and weighing when I'm making a decision or putting people in
Mm-hmm.
leadership. And outside of even just the election too, it's like what are some of those things that if I want to become a leader, and like there's young people out there who listen to this podcast or older people who listen to this podcast. I had to explain to my mom what a podcast was.
Yeah.
The other day in the car, I was like, "Hey, did you hear our podcast?" She's like, "What is a podcast?" Pod? What is a pod?
Podcast.
I was like, I don't even know, Mom. I'm not sure. But
It's
like,
radio with video.
it's a radio that you can play
Oh, like
anytime.
TV. Like,
Right, exactly.
like,
But like if there are people who listen to this and say, "All right, well, I want to become a leader," it's not just I don't know,
position.
it's not the position.
Yep.
It's not, I was thinking about this the other day too, because I feel like people think leaders are somebody who's super popular, somebody who's, well, I guess within the social media context, ton of followers,
Mhm.
ton of
Influencers. Yeah.
ton of influence.
Influencers.
Yeah. Like,
Yep.
you know how to put on Fire Fest or something like, I mean, classic example of that craziness, right? Like that's absolutely bonkers. That's not leadership, right? Leadership is developing people and m- pulling them together under a common idea and moving them forward.
Mhm.
And I feel like people can do that in the shadows. And like that's what I really hope, not in the shadows. I feel like sometimes
Like Batman.
He was the
Batman
best
is
leader.
true leadership. Doesn't care about the spotlight except for his own. So, um, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? There's people in our community who I feel like are leaders because they
Oh,
have
yeah.
direct influence on people, and I see how they shape other people and grow
Mhm.
them, but they don't get any of the kudos. They don't get the spotlight, and they might not see all this stuff, or people might not know them. And then there's some people who are on the spotlight who are doing amazing things too, right?
Right.
But I think the default definition of a leader isn't just, oh, how many followers do you have, or how much influence or views, or
Mhm.
whatever it is. I feel like if you can develop someone into something they weren't before, right? Growing someone.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hoping comes out of this election. I feel like that's kind of lofty to say. Hey, whoever I choose as my president or judge or alderman or, whoever,
Mayor or yeah,
mayor, governor, all that
for
stuff.
sure.
Like, to Toby's earlier point, which I thought is great, is like, what do we value and do we want to see that almost like move forward and
Mhm.
grow? Whether it's
Yeah.
myself, my family, my community, people who are in need, people, like, is those ideas and those demographics moving forward as a result of this leader? And if yes, that's what I would define as true leadership, right?
Mhm.
Agreed.
Yeah. So hopefully that's insightful. But I think it's a great conversation to have it and kind of talk through. So hopefully you guys go to the polls and vote and
Yeah. Do
if
your
you
research and vote.
do your
research.
Do your research
Yeah.
and vote, please.
yes.
Yes.
And don't be like one of those people who just
Yeah. Don't
straight
do
blue,
select
straight
all.
red or whatever
Yeah.
Or Christmas trees. It doesn't
no
work.
Christmas trees. It'll probably throw out your ballot because
Yeah.
you selected multiple people. um, so yeah, hopefully everybody goes out and votes. And I kind of chuckle sometimes because yes, there's social media. I love that everybody's going and voting and posting pictures. I think that's super encouraging. But sometimes there's this like subtle thing like, hey, I voted, right? Like you should be
Yeah.
voting for this person,
Yeah.
right? I'm like, don't do that. Just tell me. Like, tell me that you voted. I don't need to know who you voted for. Just go out and vote. Thanks again for listening to this episode. As always, please like and subscribe to our podcast. It really helps us out, and we'd love to hear from you as well. You can find all of our episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can watch the video episodes on YouTube, and then engage with us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're all over the place, so we'd love to get connected with you if you're new and share your questions or your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. You can always DM us on the questions or topics that you'd like to hear in the future. So we really hope you enjoy this leadership series. There's going to be a lot of great content coming up with great guests and leaders from our community who are really making a difference to restore their city. So we appreciate you listening, and we will look forward to connecting with you on the next episode.